I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they were filling with concrete as I stood in the back of the conference room, watching my 6 months of work, my ideas, my solutions, my 3 a.m. breakthroughs, being presented by people who couldn't even explain how the algorithms worked. And there was Warren, my boss, beaming with pride as if he'd personally crafted every line of code in the proposal. As you can see, our team at Helios has developed a revolutionary approach, he said, gesturing to everyone but me. My name is Avery Merrick, 36, and until that moment, I'd spent 8 years of my life believing that exceptional work would eventually be recognized. Before I continue, if you're watching this from somewhere around the world, let me know where in the comments, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. I was the only female senior developer at Helios Innovations, which made me both a token and a target. I'd learned to exist in that uncomfortable space to work twice as hard just to be considered half as competent. But this project was different. The Meridian contract was the biggest opportunity our firm had ever pursued. $5.8 million to develop an AI-driven supply chain management system that could save their international operations millions more annually. When the project first came in, nobody wanted it. Too complex, too many unknowns, impossible timeline. Warren had practically thrown the brief at me during a staff meeting. Avery, see if you can make sense of this mess. I remembered the dismissive tone, the implicit expectation of failure. My male colleagues exchanged those looks, the ones that said, better her than us. For 6 months, I lived that project. Canceled my trip to my cousin's wedding, missed my nephew's birthday, worked through pneumonia that left me coughing blood into tissues I hid in my desk drawer. I built that system from scratch, solving problems that industry leaders had declared technically unfeasible just months earlier. The night I finally cracked the distribution algorithm, the one that would reduce Meridian's shipping costs by 41%, I was alone in the office at early morning 2:17 a.m. I remember calling my mom, hands shaking with excitement, trying to explain it in layperson's terms. She didn't understand the technical breakthrough, but she understood my tears of relief. "They'll have to see your value now, honey," she'd said. 2 weeks before the presentation, I noticed something shifting. Warren began scheduling alignment meetings about the Meridian presentation that somehow never included me. Darren Frost from Business Development started asking detailed questions about my code. Celia Vaughn, who hadn't contributed a single component to the project, was suddenly reviewing all deliverables. I told myself this was normal. Final preparations, everyone making sure they understood the solution before the big presentation. Then I found the slide deck. I hadn't been asked to prepare it, which should have been my first red flag. I opened it out of curiosity while working late again, and froze as I scrolled through 42 pages that presented my work without once mentioning my name. The presenter notes showed that Darren would explain the technical architecture. Marcus would walk through the implementation approach. Warren would handle the innovative algorithm that was the crown jewel of the entire solution. My crown jewel. My innovation. I confronted Warren the next morning, trying to keep my voice steady as I pointed out the oversight. "Avery," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "This is an executive presentation. We need our strongest communicators handling this. You're more of a behind-the-scenes person, aren't you? You're not really comfortable with the spotlight." "But it's my work," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. He finally looked up, his expression a perfect blend of condescension and false concern. "It's Helios's work. We're a team, remember? And teams win together." Then the kicker. "Besides, you're not polished enough for the C-suite yet. The way you dress, your presentation style, it's just not executive ready." I walked out of his office feeling like I'd been slapped. 8 years at this company, a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of work-life balance, and I wasn't polished enough. Which brings me back to that conference room, where I stood against the wall, invisible, watching everyone else take credit for my work. Riel Takahashi, Meridian's CEO, sat at the head of the table, flanked by her executive team. She asked incisive questions that my team fumbled through answering. "And the distribution algorithm, the 41% reduction, looks incredible," But how do you account for weather pattern disruptions in the Southeast Asian corridor? She asked. Warren looked at Darren. Darren looked at Marcus. Marcus cleared his throat. Well, we've integrated several variables that... We're using a modified Bayesian approach. I interrupted from the back of the room, unable to watch this train wreck any longer. The algorithm adapts to meteorological data in real time, with fallback protocols that trigger alternative routing based on predictive modeling rather than reactive adjustments. The room went silent. 20 heads turned to look at me, most from my company wearing expressions of shock or anger. But Riel Takahashi was simply curious. And you are? She asked. Before I could answer, Warren jumped in. That's Avery, one of our developers who helped with some of the coding elements. Something in me snapped. 6 months of work, my innovation, my solution, reduced to some of the coding elements. Actually, I said, stepping forward, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I designed and built the entire system architecture. The distribution algorithm is based on my research from last year's white paper on adaptive supply chain dynamics. I wrote every line of code in the core modules and personally solved the Southeast Asian weather pattern challenge you just mentioned. The silence that followed was deafening. Warren's face had turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. Riel Takahashi set down her pen. Interesting. So you're the architect of this solution? Yes, I said simply. Then perhaps you should be the one presenting it, she said, her gaze shifting meaningfully to Warren. What happened next still plays in my mind like a slow-motion car crash. Warren laughed, actually laughed, and said, Avery tends to exaggerate her contributions. She's valuable, but this was absolutely a team effort led by our senior staff. I felt dizzy, like the floor was tilting beneath me. 8 years of diminishment crystallized in that moment. I'd been naive to think this time would be different. Riel was watching me, not Warren. Her eyes sharp, evaluating, seemed to see right through the dynamics in the room. In that case, she said, still looking at me, I have a simple request. I'd like Miss Merrick to walk us through the technical documentation. Right now. Warren's smile faltered. We hadn't planned to get into that level of detail today. I insist, Riel said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. If this was truly a team effort, then anyone on the team should be able to explain the core architecture. She turned to me. Miss Merrick, would you mind? For the next 40 minutes, I walked through every aspect of the system. The architecture decisions, the trade-offs, the innovations that made it unique. I answered questions with a confidence born from knowing every inch of what I'd built. No one interrupted. No one clarified my points. They couldn't. When I finished, Riel nodded slowly. Thank you for that clarification. She turned to her team. I think we've seen what we needed to see. I thought that would be the end of it. A momentary victory, but ultimately meaningless. Warren would find a way to punish me later. The system at Helios wouldn't change. But as the meeting wrapped up, Riel approached me directly. Ms. Merrick, I'd like you to stay behind for a moment. My team filed out, Warren throwing me a look that promised consequences. When the room had emptied except for Riel and her CFO, she closed the door. That was quite illuminating, she said. I have one more question for you. The contract we're about to sign with Helios. Whose signature will be on the technical specifications? I don't know, I admitted. Probably Warren's, as the department head. She shook her head. That won't work for us. The person who designed this system needs to sign off on it. That would be you, correct? Yes, but... No buts. If you built it, you signed for it. That's non-negotiable for us. Accountability matters at Meridian. She handed me her business card. My direct line is on the back. If there's any problem with this request, call me immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the meeting, the look on Warren's face, Riel's unexpected intervention. By morning, I'd made a decision that had been 8 years in the making. I dressed with particular care that day. Not in the muted grays and blacks that helped me blend into Helios's male-dominated environment, but in a deep blue suit that I'd bought years ago and never had the courage to wear to the office. As expected, I was summoned to Warren's office first thing. He was already mid-tirade when I walked in. The most unprofessional display I've ever seen. You undermined the entire team, made us look disorganized. I told the truth, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You don't understand how this works, Avery. This is business. No one succeeds alone. You're part of a team, and a team that was taking credit for my work, I interrupted. His face darkened. This attitude is exactly why you're not ready for client-facing roles. You're too emotional, too focused on individual recognition. Riel Takahashi wants my signature on the technical specifications, I said. That stopped him cold. What? Meridian requires that the person who designed the system sign off on the technical specs. That's me. Warren's expression shifted from anger to calculation so quickly it was almost comical. Well, that's just a formality. You'll sign as the technical lead, under my overall approval. I took a deep breath. I'll sign it, but only under certain conditions. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's not how this works. It is now, I said, pulling out a document I'd prepared the night before. These are my terms. First, my role as lead architect will be formally acknowledged in all project documentation and communications. Second, I'll lead the implementation team. Third, I want a 15% raise effective immediately, which still puts me below what Darren and Marcus make, by the way. Warren's face flushed. This is extortion. This is negotiation, I corrected. You need my signature. Meridian won't proceed without it. And unlike yesterday, today I understand my value. I could fire you for this, he threatened. You could, I agreed. But then you'd have to explain to Riel Takahashi why the person who built the system she's investing $5.8 million in is suddenly unavailable. I don't think that conversation would go well for you or Helios. He stared at me with naked hatred. I always knew you'd be trouble. Women like you always are. I smiled then, feeling something shift permanently inside me. You haven't seen trouble yet, Warren. This is just me finally taking my place at the table. You have until end of day to accept my terms. After that, I call Riel directly. I left Warren's office with my legs trembling but my head high. Anyone watching would have thought I was confident, collected. Inside, I was terrified. 8 years of keeping my head down, of being the good employee who never complained, and I'd just blown it all up in 15 minutes. My phone buzzed as I reached my desk. A text from my sister, Nora. Did you talk to him yet? What happened? I texted back. I did it. Gave him my terms. Now we wait. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, holy shit, Av. I'm proud of you. Terrified, but proud. Warren didn't keep me waiting long. By noon, HR called me into a meeting with Vanessa Kruger, the department head, and Warren himself. Their faces told me everything I needed to know before a word was spoken. The conference room felt cold, almost clinical, as I took my seat across from them. Avery, Vanessa began, her voice professionally neutral. We've reviewed your requests regarding the Meridian project. My terms, I corrected quietly. A flash of irritation crossed her face. Your terms, then. While we value your contributions to the project, your approach to this situation has been inappropriate and borders on insubordination. Warren sat silently, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. However, Vanessa continued, given the client's specific request and the timeline constraints, we're prepared to make some accommodations. The accommodations were a joke. They'd acknowledge me as a key technical contributor but not lead architect. I could join the implementation team but not lead it. And they offered a 5% performance bonus instead of the raise. This is our final offer, Vanessa said, sliding a document across the table. We need your signature on the Meridian specs by end of day. I looked at the paper, then at Warren's smug face, then back at the document. 8 years of moments like this flashed through my mind, watching male colleagues with half my qualifications get promoted over me, sitting in meetings where my ideas were ignored until a man repeated them, being called difficult when I was simply being thorough. No, I said, pushing the paper back. Those aren't the terms I outlined. Warren's smile vanished. For God's sake, Avery, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 8 years, I replied. It got me nowhere. Vanessa's professional mask slipped slightly. Think carefully about what you're doing. This is a career-defining project. You don't want to be remembered as the person who derailed it over ego. I almost laughed. My ego? After watching my entire team puff themselves up with my work? My terms stand, I said, standing up. You have until 5 p.m. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and promptly locked myself in a bathroom stall where I had what can only be described as a silent panic attack. What was I doing? I was risking everything. My job, my reputation, my financial stability, all because I couldn't swallow my pride one more time. But it wasn't pride, was it? It was dignity. It was truth. It was finally acknowledging that I deserved better than being used and discarded. At late afternoon, 4:47 p.m., as I was contemplating calling Riel Takahashi, Vanessa appeared at my desk. We've reconsidered, she said stiffly. Your terms are acceptable, with minor modifications. She handed me a new document. They'd agreed to acknowledge me as lead architect and to let me lead the implementation team. The raise was 12%, not 15%, but it was substantially more than their initial offer. We expect you to handle this transition professionally, she added, a warning in her tone. No gloating, no creating division in the team. I'm always professional, I said, signing the agreement. That's never been the issue here. That night, I celebrated with Nora over takeout Thai food in my apartment. I can't believe you actually did it, she said, raising her wine glass in a toast. To my sister, who finally grew a spine. I've always had a spine, I said. I just stopped hunching. So what happens now? She asked. Won't Warren make your life hell? I nodded slowly. Probably. But something's changed, Nora. I'm not afraid anymore. The next few weeks proved me both right and wrong. Warren didn't make my life hell, he made me invisible. He spoke around me, through me, over me, but never to me. In meetings, he acted as if my chair was empty. The only acknowledgement of my existence came in the form of impossible deadlines and midnight emails demanding immediate responses. Meanwhile, I received a formal acknowledgement as lead architect on the Meridian project. My name appeared on all the official documentation. I built my implementation team, deliberately including 2 junior female developers who showed promise but had been overlooked. And every week, I had a direct call with Riel Takahashi to update her on our progress. Those calls became my lifeline, the one place where my expertise was respected without question, where I didn't have to fight to be heard. 3 months into implementation, something unexpected happened. Riel asked to meet me for coffee during her visit to our city. We met at a small cafe far from the Helios offices, where she got straight to the point. Your work on our system has been exceptional, she said after minimal small talk. The implementation is ahead of schedule, and the early results are better than projected. But I'm concerned. About the project? I asked, confused. About you? She said. Every time we speak, I can sense the environment you're working in. It's not sustainable, Avery. Talent like yours shouldn't be constantly fighting for basic respect. I didn't know what to say. I'd become so accustomed to workplace hostility that I'd stopped seeing it as abnormal. Can I be blunt? She continued, not waiting for my response. You're being wasted at Helios, and based on what I saw in that presentation room, nothing's going to change there. She placed a business card on the table between us. Not her personal card this time, but one for Meridian's CTO, Julian Chen. We're building a new innovation division, she said. Julian's looking for a director to lead it. Your name came up in our discussions. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. You want me to work for Meridian? We want you to lead a team at Meridian, she corrected. With the appropriate title, compensation, and authority. No more fighting for scraps, Avery. The offer was extraordinary. Double my current salary, equity in the company, and a leadership role reporting directly to the CTO. It was everything I'd ever worked for, everything I'd been denied at Helios. I'd need to think about it, I said, my mind racing. And there's the Helios implementation to complete. Of course, Riel said. We're not asking you to leave your team hanging. Finish the implementation. but know that this door is open. I walked back to the Helios office in a daze, the business card burning a hole in my pocket. For the first time in years, I felt something dangerous. Hope. That hope carried me through the next 2 months of Warren's Cold War, through the snide comments from colleagues who resented my new authority, through the exhaustion of leading the implementation while being actively undermined. The system went live on schedule. It worked perfectly. The Meridian executives were thrilled. At the launch celebration, Riel publicly acknowledged me as the architect and implementation leader of the project that would transform their company. Warren stood in the corner, glaring, as she presented me with a formal letter of commendation. Everyone applauded. No one met my eyes except my small implementation team, who beamed with genuine pride in what we'd accomplished together. The next day, I submitted my resignation. 2 weeks later, I walked out of Helios for the last time. No goodbye party, no well wishes, just the silent relief of escape. On my first day at Meridian, Julian Chen gave me a tour of my new division. Build your team however you want, he told me. You've got budget for 12 headcount to start. I know exactly who I want, I said. Within a month, I'd recruited 4 people from Helios, including the 2 junior developers I'd mentored during implementation. They weren't the only ones who wanted to leave. After my departure, the floodgates opened. People who'd been silently suffering reached out, asking if there were opportunities at Meridian. I couldn't hire them all, but I could listen. I could validate their experiences. I could connect them with other companies in my network. And slowly, a community formed refugees from toxic workplaces, supporting each other, recommending each other, lifting each other up. 6 months after I left, Helios lost the Archer contract, their second biggest client to a competitor, using Meridian's new supply chain system. Our system. My system. 1 year after I left, Warren was quietly demoted. The official reason was restructuring, but industry whispers told a different story. Too many talented people had left his department. Too many projects had fallen behind schedule. The magic that had once made his team the crown jewel of Helios had vanished. 2 years after I left, I was invited to speak at the Women in Tech conference about innovation in supply chain management. From the stage, I could see familiar faces in the audience, former Helios colleagues who'd found better opportunities, who'd stopped accepting less than they deserved. And in the back row, looking considerably older and decidedly uncomfortable, sat Warren. He'd been sent by Helios to explore new technologies after their innovation pipeline had dried up. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded room. I didn't smile. I didn't glare. I simply acknowledged his presence with a small nod before returning to my presentation. That moment wasn't about revenge. It was about something more powerful. Indifference. He no longer had the power to hurt me, to diminish me, to make me doubt my worth. After my talk, a young developer approached me, clutching a notebook nervously. "Your story inspired me," she said. "I'm in a situation at work. It's like you described. My ideas, my code, but somehow never my credit." I recognized the pain in her eyes, the doubt, the confusion, the gradual erosion of confidence. "What's your name?" I asked. "Zoe," she replied. "Listen carefully, Zoe," I said, taking her hands in mine. "What they're doing isn't just unfair, it's theft. Your work has value, your voice has value, and you have choices." I told her about Riel's coffee shop offer, about the fear and exhilaration of finally standing up for myself, about the community of support I'd found on the other side. "It won't be easy," I warned, "but staying is harder, in ways you don't even realize until you've left." "How do I start?" she asked. I smiled, remembering my own first step, by recognizing that your silence has been protecting the wrong people. 3 years after leaving Helios, my division at Meridian was responsible for 22% of the company's growth. I led a team of 34 brilliant, diverse developers who knew their worth and whose contributions were celebrated, not stolen. And 5 years after that fateful presentation, I received an email that made me laugh out loud in my corner office. It was from a recruitment firm reaching out on behalf of Helios Innovations. They were looking for a new VP of technology, someone who could revitalize their innovation culture and lead them into a new era. I politely declined the opportunity to interview, but I did forward the position to several qualified women in my network, with a detailed briefing on exactly how much they should demand in salary negotiations. The ultimate revenge wasn't watching Warren's downfall or Helios's struggles. It wasn't even my own success, though that was certainly satisfying. The real revenge was changing the system itself, building a community where talent was recognized regardless of gender, where credit was given, where the next generation of Averys wouldn't have to fight the same battles I did. Some people say success is the best revenge. I disagree. The best revenge is creating a world where what happened to you cannot easily happen to someone else. It's using your hard-won power to hold the door open behind you. It's turning your pain into purpose. Do I still think about that day in the conference room, standing against the wall, watching others take credit for my work? Of course I do. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade, but those scars remind me of who I was, who I became, and why I do what I do now. So let me ask you, have you ever had your work stolen, your contributions erased, your value questioned? Tell me in the comments, not just what happened, but what you did about it. Your story matters. Your experience matters. And if you're watching this from a place that feels like my old life, undervalued, overlooked, slowly disappearing, know that there's another way. It starts with recognizing your worth. It continues with finding your voice. And it never, ever ends with settling for less than you deserve. Subscribe if this resonated with you. There are more stories to tell, more battles to fight, more victories to celebrate. And trust me, the view from the other side is worth every terrifying step of the journey.